Okay, so today we'll be doing the permutation in a string question on Leetcode. Basically, you want to see if you can find S1 or a permutation of S1 within S2. Pretty simple, I think. So like always, edge cases, if length of S2 is equal to 0, or S1 is none, or S2 is none, then you want to return false because you can't find a permutation within a non-existent string or a permutation of a string within a non-existent string within a string, because it just doesn't work like that. And then so this next case is kind of iffy. You could typically, when you're interviewing, you could ask them how you would want to treat the situation. For the purpose of this Leetcode, I will just do it just to see. So basically, if length of S1 is equal to 0, we're going to return true. Because I would say if you can have an empty string here, you could theoretically find a permutation of an empty string within a string that's here. Yeah. And then so now we're going to initialize some variables. So we're going to initialize, oh no, not a comment. We're going to initialize count. And this is dictionary to keep track of our character and count. I'm going to have left is equal to 0, which is left bound of our sliding window. I forgot to mention that we're actually going to use a starting window, but that should be the case for a lot of our questions until, we eventually hit the next portion. We're going to have a match, which is equal to 0, keeps track of how many matches we have made so far. Matches as in the character and count. Since we're going to go through and count how many of each character we have in S1, we're going to decrement it, and when basically character comma 0, then we will increment match. So now we're going to count every character in S1. So for car in S1, we're going to do count of car is equal to count.get car, 0 plus 1. Right. And so now we're going to keep track of every character and its count. Basically, this is like get or default, so we get the value of this, otherwise we default to 0. And now we want to find a window in S2 in which we can find a permutation of S1. For I in range of length of S2, you know what, here, we'll do this instead. Instead of using I, we'll start using right. So right will be the right bound and left will be the left bound, and it just makes more sense, right? So now if S2 right is in count, then we're going to do count of S2 right minus equals 1. And then if count of S2 right is now equal to 0, we're going to increment match. Because now we found a match, right? And then so if match is equal to length of count, we're going to return true. Because we now have found a match, or like a permutation, right? And so now if the window is greater than or equal to the length of S1, we need to decrease the window. Because let's just say we go to this three character window, right? You know what, let's just make it even more. 4 character window, there's only 2, so in order to have a permutation, we need to ensure that our window is only 2 characters long. For the case of example 1, we need to make sure that our window is 2 characters long to make sure that we actually have a permutation. So EI or ID or like DB, stuff like that, right? So now if it's greater than, if I is, oh, sorry, not I, right, minus left plus 1 is greater than or equal to the length of S1. So basically we want to do right minus left because let's just say this is our window. Right minus left because obviously the right minus left bound. However, we need to do plus 1 because in this case this would be 0, 1, 2, 3. So 3 minus 0 is only 3, but we have 4 characters here, right? So that's the easiest way to remember in my opinion. So we just add 1 here. And if it's greater than the length, then we need to do S2 of left. If that is in count as well, then we want to match, sorry, not increment match, but no decrement match. We need to first check if count of S2 of left is currently equal to 0. If so, then we need to match minus equal 1 because now we're going to increment count by 1. And then since if it's not equal to 0 anymore, we don't have the match, right? So we need to decrement the match and say, you know, hey, we actually don't have that match anymore. And outside of this whole block, because basically if it's not in count, then we don't need to do any of that, right? Because those letters are irrelevant. And so here we need to increment left by 1 because we need to start closing our window down. And now we just return false because if we can go through everything and we don't find the match here, then we know for sure it's wrong. And so if we run it, it should work. And yeah, it works.